Gesso, what is it? Is it necessary? Is there anything I need to know before I get started? If you are someone who is wanting to learn how to paint, or even if you just want to throw some colors up on the canvas and see what happens, there are a few simple steps you need to take before you even get started on the canvas. In this video, I'm going to show you some steps that you can take right now to get started painting right now. What does gesso do? Well, basically gesso is a primer. We use primer on our walls, on our furniture, and even on our face. And it's all for the same reason, to make the paint work better and to stay on. But what I want to talk about in this tutorial specifically is how gesso works on a canvas. So, number one, gesso provides tooth to a canvas. By that, I just mean that it provides a better surface for the paint to sit on. It grabs a hold of the paint. Number two, gesso prevents the paint from soaking into the canvas. This is very important when working with acrylic paint because what will happen without gesso is you have some really nice, wonderful, vivid colors on your canvas that you really love, but unfortunately those colors will just end up soaking into the canvas and you will end up with dull, muted colors. Yes, there are times when you do want paint to soak into the canvas or paper, but that is mostly in watercolor, so I'll save that for another video. Now you can also use your gesso to make the canvas smooth. I know I just said it adds tooth to a canvas, but bear with me. Many times when I'm working on a painting, I need the surface to be very smooth so I can be more accurate, especially in the cases of a portrait painting or really any painting with a figure in it. In order to not bombard you with too many details right now and to keep this video a bearable length, I have a video specifically on how to use gesso to make your canvas smooth, and I will link it somewhere in this video or in the description. So number four, using gesso specifically on paper. This will make the paper much more sturdy, especially in the cases of art journaling where the different mixed media techniques used can really put a beating on the paper. Gesso also prevents the ink or paint from bleeding through to the other side. I also have a video specifically for using gesso on paper, so check that out if that is something that interests you. And finally, you can use gesso as paint. I would say that 90% of the time that I use white paint, it's actually just white gesso. So you may be saying at this point, do I really need to use gesso? I would say yes. Obviously, you can do whatever you want and definitely experiment for yourself, but for the most part, yes, you should probably use gesso. Would you paint your walls on straight drywall? Maybe you would, but you get the idea. It's the same thing. And yes, even when I buy a canvas that says it's already primed, I still use gesso because it does help a lot. Okay, so now that you know you have to use gesso, where do you start? Where do you get it? What are you looking for? How do you use it? And is it going to cost you a lot of money? For myself, I use a variety of gessos depending on what I'm creating. There is usually white gesso, clear gesso, and also black gesso. There are thicker gessos and more of a cream consistency gesso. You can also tint your gessos. If you have never used gesso before and you want to use it as its most common purpose, a primer, I would recommend just a good old regular white gesso that isn't too thick. A black gesso will make your canvas black. And that can give you a really cool background to lay colors onto as well. So that is just personal preference. I sometimes use black gesso as black paint, and I very often use white gesso as my white paint. Clear gesso is mostly used when you have a surface and you want to preserve the image on it or the colors, but you want to get a surface to paint a layer over top of that. So I won't talk too much about that technique as I have covered that in other videos as well. Now, where do you get gesso? Honestly, I like to get it from wherever I can find the best deal. All of the hobby stores sell it, and if they have a 50% off coupon, use that for sure. At Michael's, I usually buy the Liquitex brand, and I think that works great. You can also find the bigger bottles of it there, and if you use that coupon, you are getting a pretty good deal. It is one thing I want to mention, it is also sold in the mixed media section. So, or if you're a scrapbooker, it's the scrapbooking section. However, I don't usually buy those brands because I find that it's just a small container for a pretty expensive price. And it does the same thing as the stuff you'll find in the fine art section in the same store. I do a cost breakdown in my DIY gesso video, so you can check that out. But I also search for good deals online and often order it there. I'm sure you can find it on Amazon or any art hobby scrapbooking site. So the final place you can get gesso from is, I kind of already mentioned it, guess where? You make it. You use regular school glue, some white acrylic paint, and some talc powder or baking soda. Sounds a little bit like what we use to make slime, doesn't it? Or what they use. I don't really make it. My daughter does. I assure you it is completely different than slime, so don't let that scare you off of trying this yourself. And if you want to see the gesso I have made and the results from it, definitely check out that DIY gesso video. One more thing I wanted to include in this video is how to use the gesso. I do have other videos on variations of how to use it, but I really want you to be able to go ahead and start with using this right away. Towards the end of this video, I am going to give you one last tip on how to save money and some time using gesso, so make sure you keep watching for that. So I just have a small 8x8 canvas here, and I just want to show you the texture of it so you can see what I'm talking about. Do you see that texture in there? I'm hoping you can see it. I think you can. Okay, so the paint is going to really just soak into there, and so we want to put some gesso on there. Now, one thing that I'm going to talk about while I'm doing that is that I often, and this is not necessary at all, and if you have never tried doing anything on a canvas, and this is your first time, you don't have to worry about this step, but if you want to try it, it's not hard at all, it's very simple. I'm also going to do it for the purposes of this video. Because the gesso is white, I'm going to just mix in some color with it, okay? Often I will mix up a gray. I don't usually use gray right from the tube, but I'll mix up a gray and add that in my gesso, and just to have some color down on the canvas. Or I'll do a yellow just so that it can kind of shine through my painting a little bit. Let's try this green. I don't know what I'm going to end up doing with this canvas, so I can't really think of a color to use. I could use gray, but... So all I'm going to do, this is very simple. So like I said, you can scoop it out or you can brush it on. I'm just going to pour a little bit down on here so you can see a little bit about how I'm using it. So I'm just going to put a little bit on like that, okay? And I am going to add the color. And I don't mix this ahead of time. I just add a little bit of color. I don't even care if the color is perfectly blended all throughout. In fact, I sometimes like it when it isn't. And all you need to do is just brush it in. You can use a brush. You can use a palette knife. It doesn't have to be an expensive one, so you can just do this, and that will help make textures. So if you want some texture in that, go ahead and experiment with a palette knife. You don't have to do anything fancy. But for now, I'm just going to do the brush. People are most comfortable with brushing things on rather than as soon as they pick this up, they don't know. But if you are, if you can spread butter and you know how to do that, then you can use a palette knife. What you want to do is you want to go both ways because you want to get inside that fabric. You want to get in that tooth of the fabric there. And, go around the sides. It's just a cheap canvas. These ones I usually cover and do mixed media ones with, so I cover that with script, but I'm just using it for this video. Or I'll put washi tape around the side or whatever to cover up those staples. I think this must be obviously a dollar store canvas. You can see it's just a very, very light green, and now it's basically a uniform color, and I'm just going all directions. I really want that to get in there. And so I would say with the brush, you're more effective at doing this than with the palette knife. Now, one last tip. This is definitely going to save you money and maybe some time as well. You can use gesso to cover already printed or painted on canvases. So, when you go to the big home stores and you see those huge canvases for $20 or whatever, those are usually much cheaper than the art canvases you would buy at an art store, in the fine arts section at a hobby store. You just have to know how to prepare them properly. Or you may already have a canvas at home that you are just tired of the image on it and you want to freshen it up. Cover it with a couple of coats of an opaque gesso, so that's not clear gesso, that's a you can't see through it, and you'll be good to go. The other thing I love about finding these canvas art deals is that they come in unique sizes. They aren't always the standard canvas sizes like 8 by 10 and 11 by 14 and 16 by 20 and so on that you find with picture frames and whatnot. So if you walk into an IKEA or something and find a massive canvas for, I don't know, like $10 with a picture of a clown riding on a giraffe, and you think to yourself, I don't like that picture, buy it for the actual canvas itself. So if you still aren't sure, I do have a video that shows you specifically how to cover it up properly so the paint will stick to that smooth, slick surface. So I'm not saying go find cheap canvases that are gonna fall apart. I'm saying go find canvases that are cheap, as in not too much money, but still a good quality canvas. So at this point, if you are just, you know, wanting to throw some paint on there and just experiment, you can totally leave it like this. Now, if you are already, you know, you already kind of have some painting techniques down and you have a specific image you want to do and you have a plan and you have some experience with this, you may want to, and in that case, you probably already know what I'm going to say and you probably don't need to be told this, you may want to sand this a little bit and put another coat on it. Check out my other videos that I have on gesso. I think I have 8 in all. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and hit the subscribe button, and I love to hear comments. I definitely want to hear if you have any questions. Please don't hesitate to ask them. I am happy to answer all your questions. I will see you later. Bye.